What's up, guys? Welcome back to Will of DDT. My name is Anonymous, and today we're going to be giving you guys another deck profile. We got something a little interesting for you today. This one is going to be a little bit spicy. This is our Kozuki Odin deck profile. A really solid deck. Unfortunately, he's one of the most slept-on leaders in the game because he's usually overshadowed by his green counterpart, Kid, who definitely has a flashier ability, but this guy's leader ability is nothing to scoff at. If you use it correctly, if you build your deck right, this deck is capable of plays that Kid and other decks just simply could not fathom. So I really love playing this deck. It's super enjoyable and actually way more competitive than a lot of people think it is. And yeah, without further ado, let's get right into the deck. Alright guys, so let's just quickly recap Odin's leader ability, right? Again, very uncommon card. A lot of people are sleeping on this guy, so some of you may not know what he does. So let's take a look at the ability. Activate main once per turn. You can trash one land of Wano card from your hand to set 2 of your Dawn cards as active. So where Kid gives you 2 swings, Odin is giving you 2 Dawn. Now that may seem a little lackluster, may not seem like much, but think about it this way. On any given turn, you have 2 extra Dawn to work with, right? If you want to discard a Wano card from your hand. Now, granted, you don't want to do that too recklessly. You're gonna, throw your hand size away. But let's say on your 6 Dawn turn, you want to put down a 3 Dawn unit and a 5 Dawn unit. You can do that. Even though that costs 8 total, you can use Odin's leader ability after you play your first unit to get 2 back, and then play another unit with the extra Dawn that you now have. So this basically just allows you to set up some really crazy boards way earlier than your opponent would expect to have to deal with, and that in itself is really threatening. And as we go throughout this deck list, I'm going to show you some of the crazy plays that you can make with this. So without further ado, let's get right into the cards. So first up, we have got our searchers. Nothing crazy here, pretty standard. For Bonney and for Momo. So Momo is going to be searching for all of your Wano cards. That's about half of the deck. And Bonney is going to be searching for all of your Supernovas. And once again, that's about half of the deck. So I would not recommend playing this deck without either of these at 4. This is a great way to start your first turn. Just put a few of these down. And since Momo and Bonney are both the reusable type of searcher where you can rest them to, get your search again and again, you do want to try to put them down alongside blockers, or just put them down in some kind of strategic way where you will get more than one search off of them, because normally I find if my hand size is big early game, I usually end up steamrolling my opponent. So you want to try to generate as much hand advantage as you can off of these two, especially with Momo, because then you have more targets for your leader ability, right? You have more Wano cards to discard. But nothing crazy there. A Wano searcher and a Supernova searcher, and that is that. Next up, we have got our blockers. Again, pretty standard package. At the moment, green doesn't really have much better to run. We have got our 4 1-cost Bege, just a simple blocker, nothing more to it. And our 2-cost Killer. Killer is really good in this deck because Wano does like to go wide. We do like to build a pretty big board. And as you guys know, Killer's ability is if you got 3 or more units on board and he's got a Dawn attached, when he blocks, you get to draw off of it. So that ability will be live pretty frequently in this deck since you do put a lot of units on board. And worst comes to worst, he's a 1000 counter. There's certainly no shame in using him that way. Don't become too attached to him being a blocker necessarily, because in this deck, one thing I do find is that a lot of your counters are things that you want to save for potential plays. So, Killer is one counter who I don't feel so bad giving up. Don't feel too bad about giving up that blocker. All right, next up, we have got what green does best. We've got 4 copies of Nekomamushi, and we have got 4 copies of Izo. Both of these rest a card on play. So Neko is going to cost 2 and rest a 3 or less. That hits most blockers in the game. And then Izo is going to cost 3 and hit a 4 or less and force them to get rested. So Izo will maybe hit a few more blockers in blue, and yeah, maybe a few units that you might want to kill. But overall, these are both fantastic cards. Izo, of course, we are playing for the 2k counter mostly, but certainly if you need to player, that effect is fantastic as well. And then next up, we are obviously running our Pretty standard green package along with the resters. We are running the Structure Deck Killer. This KOs on play one of your opponent's rested characters with a cost of 3 or less. So you're going to rest them with Neko, and then you're going to drop the Killer and kill the unit you just rested. And then just for flavor, we are running 1 copy of the Blocker Law. So this guy, you can play him for 5, bounce a Killer back to hand, and then just replay it, or bounce a Izo or a Neko back to hand and save them in hand for another rest, possibly next turn, or possibly just recall your Izo to hand to have the 2k in hand. So yeah, this pretty standard package right here. You got these 8 to rest the opponent's characters, these 2 to kill him, and this guy to recycle these useful effects, because we got a lot of good on plays between these cards here. And next up, let us look at this guy. Nothing crazy here, but everybody does usually run him. We've got 4 copies of Scratchmen Apoo. Pretty simple, 2k counter. That's about it. He's a Supernova, so he is searchable off of Bonney, so in case you whiff otherwise, you'll usually at least hit one of these guys, right? So just add to hand, keep him as a 2k counter. Next up, we have kind of a debatable spot. I would say if you wanted to swap out anything in the deck, this is the most up for grabs. We have 2 copies of Yamato. So Yamato is a 1k counter, so at the very least you can use her for that. But yeah, she's 5 cost, 5k, and has a pretty amazing effect. She has double attack and banish, right? So if she successfully strikes at your opponent's life, you're going to take away 2 life, and they're going to get banished. No triggers, no hand advantage, they're just going to go straight to the trash, which is amazing. So the fact that she's just such a huge threat means that your opponent usually has to deal with her. Honestly, she will usually get jet pistoled or removed some other way if you do decide to play her, but hey, sometimes just removing a bait is good enough. Maybe that's what you want to do with her. But if I'm being honest, more often than not, I do just end up using her as a very, very pretty 1k counter. Next up, we have the backbone of any Wano deck. 4 copies of Okiku, 2 copies of Raizo. So the 4 Okikus, this is just a phenomenal card. Everybody should know this card by now. It's a 3 cost 5k, which is in itself already a freaking amazing stat line. And then we have got the Dawn ×1 effect. When attacking, Okiku can rest one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 5 or less. Again, that hits about just about every relevant blocker in the game. So when she swings, you can rest one of your opponent's blockers and guarantee that your hit goes through. Just wreak havoc with your opponent. It is absolutely amazing. There's no reason you should run this card at less than 4. Rizo, also a pretty good card. It's a 3 cost 4k, and when attacking, once per turn, if you have 2 or more rested characters, and he counts himself, by the way, so if you have another character rested, Rizo attacking will count as the 2nd rested character. But yeah, if you've got 2 or more rested characters when he attacks, you get to draw a card, which is good. That's a solid effect. If I'm being honest, again, I don't usually play this guy. He usually ends up getting used as a 1k counter, but it's a solid effect. And also, one thing to consider is that he's one of the rare cards in this game that does not need a Dawn in order to get his when attacking effect. So that's something to consider maybe. And obviously, if we're running Wano, we gotta complete the package with this guy, Kinemon. Amazing card. 6 costs, 6,000, and on play, if your leader is Kozuki Odin, play one of the Akazaya 9 characters with a cost of 3 or less from your hand. So you can play this guy for 6, and then just play an Okiku or a Raizo from your hand for free. You're always going for Okiku. Raizo is just like the only situation you would ever do this is if you don't have the Okiku. But yeah, Kinemon, you are basically you're getting a 9 Dawn value for just 6. You're playing this guy for 6, and then you're just playing Okiku for free, and then his second effect is just absolutely brutal. If he's got a Dawn on him when he's attacking, you can set one of your Akazaya 9 characters with a cost of 3 or less as active. So everyone, if you've seen a Wano deck, you've seen this play. Okiku is going to swing for 6 or 7. She's going to rest one of your opponent's blockers. Kinemon is going to swing, reset Okiku as active, and then Okiku is going to swing again. It's just so brutal. Between those two units, you have 3 attacks. It's just so strong, man. And the fact that you get to play the Okiku for free off of the Kinemon is insane. And again, you know, Kinemon specifies that your leader needs to be Kozuki Odin, so this is kind of a special perk that only the Odin decks can get. So there is that. That package needs to be in the deck. If you're not running that, you're not playing Wano. There's no reason to be playing Wano if you're not running those. Next up, another staple green card. If you're not running this guy, again, you're just doing it wrong. We're running 3 copies of Basil Hawkins. When he's got a Dawn, if he attacks and battles a character, he gets to attack again. It is my opinion that the strongest offensive board in the game is this guy, and this guy over here. Okiku, Kinemon, and Basil is just insanity because between these 3, you can actually have 5 attacks. Okiku swings, Kinemon resets Okiku, Okiku swings again, Basil swings at their unit that Okiku rested, and then Basil swings again. It is just absolute insanity. If you get these 3 on board, your opponent is in for hell next turn. Just absolutely unstoppable. It is worth noting that these 3 can actually be played in a single turn using Odin's ability. So you can actually, you know, throw down as early as your 9 Dawn turn, you can throw down your Kinemon for 6, and then you'll only have 3 Dawn left over. You can use Odin's ability, trash a card, get 2 back, and then you'll have 5 more to play Basil. So you can get all 3 of these out in a single round. And that's just some of the craziness that I'm talking about with the Odin ability. I mean, people don't expect for you to be able to put that many power cards down in a single round, but Odin lets you do it. So that's one reason I really like this leader and really like these cards. And then next up, the only event that we are running in this deck, running 3 copies of Paradise Waterfall. So as you guys know, this basically gives your leader, one of your characters, plus 2k for the battle, and then you get to set one of your characters as active. More often than not, I'm using this to save my Basil or my Okiku. So again, if your opponent swings at it, you can just buff it by 2000 and then set it as active so that it's not a valid swing target for the rest of the turn. So Paradise Waterfall, fantastic card. Yeah, I don't bother with any Gibsons or anything like that. Just Paradise Waterfall to keep your Okiku and your Basil alive and just let them wreak havoc for another turn on your opponent is just can really win you games. And the trigger is KO one of your opponent's rested characters with a cost of 4 or less. If I draw this in life early game, I do use this to kill my opponent's searchers if they're rested, or, you know, in the blue matchup, it's fantastic because they just have a ton of rested 4 costs. So yeah, solid trigger as well. I think it earns its spot at 3. And then our final card in this deck, and I have maybe another hot take here for you guys. We have 8-cost Kid. So 8-cost Kid, and here's my hot take, is better in an Odin deck than it is in a Kid deck. This card is just freaking phenomenal in this deck. It has single-handedly won me games. It just swings the tide of battle so easily. Obviously, you guys know what this guy does. You play him for 8, and then you put, you know, 1 Dawn on him and rest him to play a cost of 3 or less from your hand. But in Odin, like I said, however many Dawn you have, you basically have 2 more. So you can spend 8 on the Kid, put 1 Dawn on him, and then you'll have 1 Dawn left over that you can spend on a Bege. You know, Kid's ability will get you a Killer, and then you can actually use Odin ability to get 2 more Dawn back, and then basically play, you know, another Bege and another Bege, or, you know, another Killer. You can go, and I've done this many times, you can go from a board of legit 0 units to a board of 8-cost Kid and 3 blockers in a single turn. It is absolute insanity. That 2 extra Dawn really does make all the difference. So 8-cost Kid is just a phenomenal card in this deck. again, I mean, I've just set up walls of blockers in a single turn. I often like to kind of sit on my blockers early game. If I get the Beges and Killers early, unless there's a real reason to put them down, I kind of like to stockpile them in my hand. And then when, you know, late game comes around, if I've got this guy in hand, I'll just put him down, use Odin ability to just get down a whole wall of blockers around Kid. And suddenly, you know, you can go from having 2 life and your opponent having 5 to just slowly whittling them down. I mean, they're just not able to get through that. So this is a really, really good card in this deck. Again, it's better in here than it is in Kid. So yeah, that rounds out the deck, guys. That is the last card. And I'm just going to lay out all the cards so you guys can get another look, and we'll just kind of have some parting thoughts on the deck. Alright guys, so as promised, here's the deck list all laid out. We have just a quick recap. Our 8 searchers over here, our 8 blockers, and our 8 resters. Over here we've got Killer to kill rested units, and Law to recycle some of these great on-plays we just talked about. 2K counter, Yamato just as a big threat or a bait, and then Okiku and Raizo as our MVP Wano attackers. And then we have Kinemon, just freaking fantastic. Again, play the Okiku for free and just let it swing extra times. And then Basil for some fantastic board clear. Then again, these 3 right here are just some of the best offensive board you can set up in this game. Just so freaking fantastic. The 8 cost Kid, just set up a wall, be obnoxious, force your opponent to keep swinging and trying to kill him, and while you slowly chip away at their life. And then we've got the 1 cost Paradise Waterfall, just to keep some of your strong power units like Basil and Okiku and maybe Kinemon alive, so that they can continue to just, you know, do damage to your opponent. I also just wanted to mention Odin Leader effect is maybe a little more diverse than I made it out to be. I mean, obviously you can use the 2 extra Dawn off his effect to play more units, but you can also use that 2 extra Dawn for swings, right? You can play a big unit, and then you can get 2 Dawn back and put that Dawn on your swings to just make them you know, more lethal to your opponent. And you can also just save that Dawn for next turn, right, with the Paradise Waterfall if you need. So that 2 Dawn that Odin gives you back, you can use it any which way you choose, and it definitely has even helped me to close out games sometimes. Sometimes that 2 Dawn made the difference between me being able to do a big enough swing for game. So yeah, just make sure you're using it, keeping in mind that you always have that option available to you. All right, guys, that is it for the deck list. I absolutely love this deck. It is easily my favorite or second favorite deck to play in this format, and Wano only gets better with the next set of cards. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Is this deck working for you? How do you like it? What changes would you make? And yeah, I hope you guys really enjoyed this video, and we will see you in the next one. Peace.